welcome to another Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, CaptainLogun, and we got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today, so tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This week it is the 2-year anniversary of the podcast, and I have a very special guest. Now, many of you know him already, but if you don't, you're going to be in for a treat because this is what I consider, or who I consider, the mastermind of Sea of Thieves and what we have today. And I can't wait to get into this interview. I had a really good time talking with him, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Let's get to it.
Tie down the main mast, mateys. Because here he is, the cunning kingfish, the bay barracuda. A man so deep, he's almost unfathomable. A man so quick, he's even fast asleep. Thank you. Now let's give him a very big hand, because he's only got one. I give you the steel-handed stingray, Captain James
See how greatly the men favour you, sir.
The puling spawn, how I despise them. Go get them, Captain! Yes.
Ahoy. Good morning, or good evening, as I should say.
It's either or for me. I'm usually up at this time, so it's kind of my evening for me technically, but it would be like my 5 p.m. as opposed to my 1 a.m.
Right. Okay. Well, great.
How's it going?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's a real honor.
No, it feels like it's been a long time coming, I guess. Like chatting and like finally getting together to do this kind of podcast. So yeah, it's great. It's good. It's going to be exciting, I'm sure. I'm sure you've got some great questions lined up.
I hope so. I hope I do you justice. I've been thinking about these like all month, and I've been writing them down in my journal.
Oh no,
so.
Don't say that. Now you're putting pressure on me now.
No, it's trust me. I just hope you don't come away and think, oh God, I wish he had asked some deeper questions. I've tried to field a couple from friends that will hopefully give me some good idea. But I wanted to kind of start off because I have some what I consider very important questions that I have to ask you. What's your favorite Star Wars film?
Oh wow. Ooh. I know the answer. I'm just thinking of the reasoning. Obviously, the first Star Wars film I saw was A New Hope, Episode 4, or just Star Wars. But I think my go-to Star Wars movie, in terms of I just want to get that hit of Star Wars, or I want to explain to someone or show someone what I love about Star Wars, it's got to be Empire Strikes Back. That's my favorite.
That is a really good one, and it definitely capitalizes on some of the coolest things about the series.
It's like it's the Han and Leia's relationship, the whole Cloud City scenes, the emotion, tonally it's a lot more varied. The Dagobah sections, like it's just amazing film. Everyone says that though, don't they? So
I definitely have a lot of friends that really say that Empire is probably the best, and I agree. It is definitely one of my favorites, in top 5 for sure, or top 3 I would say for sure. But it's so tough for me to try, and it changes all the time for me. Like I always feel like I'm changing my mind about it. But yeah, I would say Empire is definitely comfort food for when I want to sit down and watch it. Yeah. Okay, so if Empire is your favorite, then how about Indiana Jones?
Oh, I mean, my favorite film is probably Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I can see
that. But I would say I really like Temple of Doom. Really like it. It gets such a bad rap, but it's just got this, that whole thing that George Lucas always said. It's harkening back to the adventure serials and just the atmosphere it creates, and just that opening musical number. And it's.
Oh yeah.
I think, like, and I'm a total geek for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but I just think that was Indiana Jones in his absolute prime. Just Harrison Ford, the actor, Indiana Jones, the character, the way he looks, the way he acts. It's just the prime of that character. And it's unfortunate that it's in a movie that maybe not everyone values. And don't get me wrong, it is definitely all over the place tonally. And there's definitely some questionable things in there. But like it is just that scene at the end where he's freeing the kids and like he's in the mine and he's kind of stood there, and the epic shot when he's fighting on the conveyor belt, it's the rope bridge. It's got so many fantastic scenes in it. But yeah, overall it doesn't quite land. I mean, Last Crusade, I think emotionally is the strongest.
Yeah. See,
so
I've
many
always
great
been
scenes in it.
I've been a huge fan of The Last Crusade because I love the relationship between Indy and his father, and the quest for the Holy Grail has always been one of those big stories in my life that I love that story. So the fact that they're going on this, it feels like kind of like a Goonies-esque story where they're having to go down into these catacombs to try and find this tomb of this knight in the engraving on his shield. And like I love how all these different characters come together in betrayal and love and all this. Oh, I love that stuff.
I think if you'd asked me when I was a lot younger, I would have said Last Crusade because of all the things you just mentioned. I think being a lot older, appreciating Raiders of the Lost Ark as a movie and how it's shot and how it's filmed and how it was the first one, I think that's why it superseded the others. But Last Crusade would have been my favourite growing up. I mean, the whole the Cup of the Carpenter, and it's not this gilded shiny thing. It's this kind of gnarly, beaten-looking little cup, and the whole Indiana, let it go, and there's all those bits. It's just I absolutely adore. There's a kind of there's almost like a more mythic level of storytelling in that third one. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love the mysticism that came with Temple of Doom, like that the whole world that he got literally dropped into, that he kind of had to deal with it, and it was so amazing to see like how he kind of helped this entire village and stopped all this tyrannical stuff going on, but still had time to kind of have fun and play around with all the different characters in there, and still bring a really good story to you through their eyes. And there's so much to love about those movies that I don't think I get to talk about with too many people on a regular basis about. So
I mean I think I'd mentioned this to the actual DK Vine guys years ago when we kind of met up in person. Part of the reason, obviously, I grew up loving Rare games, as you know, and part of the reason Donkey Kong Country really stood out to me. Not it was a fantastic game. The level design was fantastic. It looked amazing. Such a fantastic world. But just the whole minecart sequence. Playing that game made me realize there's someone at Rare who likes the films that I do.
yeah, it was really that. I remember playing those when I was young and just getting a real, oh man, I used to get stuck on those levels, but that was kind of where I learned precision gaming with like how to time stuff, and that's where it really kind of took me to another level where I was like, all right, well, I'm used to Mario, I can jump around, I'm not the best, but I can still get my fun from it. But when I was playing Donkey Kong Country, it was like you had to know like just where to jump and just how long to hold the jump for, and that was when I was like, oh, this is a good game. It looks amazing too.
Yeah, it was one of those standout titles that you always remember, and I think like the second one is probably my favorite. Donkey Kong Country. I just think it was the formula perfected. It obviously had a fantastic pirate theme as well, and music was brilliant, as it was across that whole series. But yeah, there we go, from Indiana Jones to Donkey Kong Country in 5 minutes.
That's not bad. That's pretty good. We'll have to see. I'll have to turn this into the record holders and see if we can get an award for it. So moving into from Donkey Kong Country 2 in a really strong pirate theme, favorite pirate movie?
I would say, is it a pirate movie? It is to me. I would say The Goonies. Obviously, I'm going to say that.
I would,
but I love Goonies. I love the original animated Peter Pan. I loved Hook, 1992,
Oh, yeah.
1991. Hook, I absolutely loved that.
Oh God.
I actually really liked. I don't know if you saw it. The Christian Bale, Charlton Heston adaptation of Treasure Island.
Oh, I don't know if I ever saw that one.
Oh, you should totally seek that out. I don't think it's on Blu-ray. I don't think it's on any streaming services, but it certainly isn't in this country.
I'll have
But
to.
yeah, Christian Bale as Jim Hawkins, Charlton Heston as Long John Silver, Oliver
Oh my
Reed
God.
as he's in there as well as
Oh my.
as Bill. It's just unbelievable. Like it's obviously it's not the biggest budget film, but atmosphere and how close it is to the book, it's awesome. You should definitely seek that out.
Well, there's some real acting chops in that lineup. Jeez,
Yeah,
I
brilliant.
feel bad. I haven't ever bothered. I haven't found out about this. That's insane.
That's really good.
Man.
And then a little bit. I think I was very young when it came out, so I'm not going to put too many caveats on it. But at the time, I really liked Cutthroat Island.
Yeah, I did
liked
too.
it.
It was
Going back now, you see
adventurous.
more flaws, but at the time, it felt like it was on the like the cinema for a couple of weeks. Then she took it off because it was taking no money at the box office. But it was absolutely,
Yeah.
it was great. It's like, how did they afford to make this movie?
Yeah, definitely. So, as I wanted to kind of break the ice with these films, because I think anyone that knows you and knows Sea of Thieves can all attest that these are kind of like our little gems that we pick out of our childhood that kind of bring us to what makes Sea of Thieves so special, and it all kind of comes around to this idea of creating your own adventure, creating your own story. And that's something that you've always talked about. And anytime I've ever listened to you talk to other people about the game, and it's something that I know anyone that plays this game finds that kind of joy out of this. And a lot of folks can pick and choose what they like about the game. So I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to talk about world building, because Sea of Thieves is, it's a game I've never played a game like this before, and it's so cool to just pick it up and, you know, whatever I want to do, just go out and do it. But it's got this beautiful world to live in, and it's all pirate based, so pretty much anything goes as far as what I want to do. And the thing that I really kind of wanted to talk about was obviously lore. And I kind of want to start off with lore because based on the stuff that you love growing up, you've crafted this story. And when the game first came out, a lot of that was kind of locked away outside of the game. Like we knew a little bit about who each of the different factions were, but was it always kind of your goal when making Sea of Thieves that you wanted to try and slowly kind of craft more narrative into the game? Or were you more kind of see how people take it and see if that's something that they like, and then if they like it, then kind of start pushing more of that into the game, and instead of just keeping it to like books?
I think I mean, certainly like years before launch, a lot of the lore that is now kind of second nature to, like, you know, big fans of the game, that was all mapped out, but only really explored as you kind of mentioned in the Tales of the Sea of Thieves lore book, and then eventually the novel just before the Tall Tales. But the real turning point was early in the prototype, when initially at least it was very mechanical, very mechanics based, and you had the galleon on the water, and you could explore what were effectively prototype islands. They weren't the islands that you see today, although some of them have a lot of similarities. Like Crescent Island, there was a version of Smuggler's Bay back then. But our goal was not to immerse you in the lore. Our goal was, can we prove out the core gameplay of, you know, four players on a ship truly feeling like they're working together, and they're having that choose your own adventure experience, but in kind of a really basic way. Then the turning point became, I guess we started to add characters, and characters to embody and be the cipher for kind of certain types of gameplay. So the Pirate Lord went in first as a aspirational character that basically controlled your progression. So, and what we first had was very rudimentary, and then as we expanded it, and I started to get really deep into island design, working with the art team to kind of work out how big's the world, how many islands are there, what are the world regions, what are the landmarks on the island, and why could they potentially be there. That was happening at the same time as kind of I'll call it the formalization of the core loop. So what do you go out to do? Where does it end, and what's the reason to go back around? So, and it was only ever, obviously, in Sea of Thieves, it's pretty slim anyway, but the idea of you can't open chests in the world. They're physical objects that aren't really yours until you hand them in. You're basically ferrying them across the world. And then the ownership of certain playstyles around factions, which later became trading companies. And that's where we really started to get into, well, my mind started getting into, okay, these characters are in the world and they want you to do these things. And this was years and years ago. Why are they there? Why are they asking you to do these things? Why is the world the way it is? And why does everyone want to be in the Sea of Thieves? And that was the really seed for what is the pirate's life in the Sea of Thieves? What does it represent? And that's how the characters start to be built from there, which is, okay, the pirate lord represents this. He represents the epitome of the crew bond. The pirate's life in the Sea of Thieves is one fraught with peril because there's cursed objects and there's temptation, and you can be consumed by your own greed. And the pirate lord was someone who embodied, he wouldn't go troll other players. He wasn't someone who would turn against his crew. He was about the crew bond above all else. So the idea was, well, maybe he didn't choose greed. Maybe he didn't choose these cursed objects. He chose objects and gravitated towards quests that would only allow him to continue to live his adventures forever, which is why he became a ghost. And then you start playing with what's the opposite to that. And then you get things like gold hoarders and giving into greed. So generally, the canvas for the world was the island design, and then just the characters and why they wanted to be there. Why did everyone want to be in the Sea of Thieves? And just this idea of it's a pirate paradise, and it's hidden from the world by what became the Devil's Shroud. And just that, what I thought was a really kind of exciting notion was that the Sea of Thieves is actually a real place. And if you had the key or you had the map or you knew where it was, anyone could get there. And then it felt like, well, in real pirate taverns, this would be something that would be talked about over a glass of grog, as in this kind of fairy tale that people would want to get to, this Shangri-La of the pirate world. And that's it, really. I mean, that's really the seed of it. And then you've kind of got a basis for what's important, character motivations, and then you can build from there. But all of that was very well understood, even before some of the very particulars of the gameplay were nailed down. The whole idea of the Order of Souls being bounty hunters that want the skulls because they read the memories of the skulls, and they are basically the magical cartographers of our world. That was planned out years before it went into game, and I totally appreciate in the game when it first launched, it's pretty wafer thin, right? You go, why do they want these skulls? Oh, they're just creepy, and they just want these skulls, and they give you gold for them. There was definitely a level of thinking behind all of that. It just wasn't the right time. And the game was led on, as you say, choose your own adventure. It was about making players the main characters. It wasn't about forcing all this lore on them. But later, as we continue to build out the features in that first year, the big thing that was missing for me and the team was this sense of a story voyage, this voyage that was going to give you more of the lore of the world, so you'd be able to role play and choose your own adventure more easily because you understand why the world is the way it is, what the mechanics of it are, the laws within that world, and why people are there and why people want to get there, and how that's almost like it's kind of like a proxy for the player as well. Like, I've always liked that idea that the characters want to be there because of the freedom of the Sea of Thieves, and players want to play Sea of Thieves because of the freedom of Sea of Thieves, and there's a nice parallel there.
Yeah, there really is. It's interesting because as gamers, I feel like we always struggle with feeling like we want to progress and there's definitely times where some of my friends, they like to jump on Sea of Thieves because for them, it feels like a break from constantly needing to feel like they're doing some sort of grinding or working towards a certain goal, and getting on Sea of Thieves for them is the time when they get to have fun and they just get to relax and have some adventure and not really care too much whether they get gold or don't get gold. But they like to get some, and then afterwards they want to go celebrate by hunting down a ship and trying to steal someone's treasure. And if we don't get them, it's okay. It's not a big deal. We still had fun. But if we do, then it's even better of a victory for the end of the night. And I wanted to, I could listen to you talk about Sea of Thieves all night, but you mentioned a couple of things. There's a couple things that you touched on that I want to give you a couple options to kind of dive into, because you talked early on about how you were crafting the islands and how a lot of the islands haven't changed. One quick note that I was curious if you knew, I know you've helped design Sailor's Bounty, and down in Sailor's Bounty has become a bigger thing as far as like becoming a part of a tall tale. But there's one little dog collar that's been in the game for quite a while. It's shifted positions and is currently residing on the ankle of a foot, skeleton leg that is sticking up out of the ground. And this is something I've been keeping track of this collar for quite some time. So I wanted to ask and see, do you know what that collar is and why it's there and what's going on with that?
I do. Have you spoken to DeMarco in the tavern?
Not recently. Should I?
So you should, but the
Okay.
owner of that collar is related to the name of the Sea Dog Tavern.
Interesting.
So
okay,
the Glorious Sea Dog is the name of the tavern, and but yes, it's related to DeMarco.
Okay. I will have to dig into that, because that's been something that's been itching in the back of my mind for a very long time. So I'm glad to know that there is a good story behind it, and I'll dig into that.
Well, hopefully, most things you find should have a level of thought behind them, even though
that's what
sometimes it feels like we do it for ourselves as much as the kind of fans.
That's what I appreciate so much about the game. It's like anything that I find in the game has been thought about why it's there. It's not just there. And especially when someone starts poking around at it throughout the course of a couple of years, I start to wonder, like, okay, well, what's really going on here? Because I don't know if anyone else is paying attention to this, but it's something on my mind. But I wanted to dive into a small little portion that you talked about where you were creating the different seas. And I've always wondered, because you have the Shores of Plenty, which is the quintessential Caribbean style world, and you've got the Ancient Isles, which is very, very drenched in like very ancient lore. Makes me feel of like Brazil and kind of South Africa areas and stuff. Mm-hmm. But we've got the wilds and the ancient tribes that they weren't actually kind of situated on the actual islands. They were more of a roaming tribe as far as some of the actual tattoo descriptions. Is it tattoo? I think it's makeup. It's makeup descriptions lead to them being a roaming tribe. So I was wondering, what was the inspiration for the wilds? What was the goal that you wanted to create this darker atmosphere in Sea of Thieves?
Well, even before we had those regions, a big part of our original kind of pitch, both externally to Microsoft and internally to the teams at Rare around Sea of Thieves, was we wanted to create a game that could provide players with a wider range of emotions than they typically get in a game.
Right.
From feeling the awe of looking at a sunset in Sea of Thieves, the awe of looking at a skeleton fort cloud, the sense of loss when you lose your treasure and you lose your ship, exploring on an island in a storm, foreboding atmosphere, exploring in mysterious caves. It was like, let's build a game that runs the full spectrum of emotions. Because if we're building a choose your own adventure experience, you want to ensure that even if you're going back to the same island, because the world is just a stage to serve up these adventures to you, you're going back to Sailor's Bounty, for example, or Smuggler's Bay or Crescent Isle, you're going back there for the 50th, the 100th time, but with a very different motivation, that things could happen to you that made that experience feel entirely unique. You know, your ship could sink in the bay, a storm could roll in, a fog bank could roll in, you could be attacked by the Kraken, you could encounter other players on the island, work with them or work against them. So when it came to the world, it felt like that needed to be built into the world as well. So your initial expectation when you think of Sea of Thieves and you look at screenshots is, of course, it's the shores of plenty. The idea of this, this bountiful Caribbean region with turquoise waters, white sand, it's absolutely gorgeous. All kind of flat islands like little atolls. Ancient Isles was was right from the start. It's more ancient ruins. There's more kind of going on there. There's more of an Indiana Jones, I'm going through jungle kind of feel. That felt like it was going to be an important part of our game. And then the Wilds was, okay, so we've got this adventure feeling area. We've got this paradise, like some place you'd want to have your vacation. And then the Wilds was, what if we had this oppressive place that when you were there, it felt very, almost like you didn't want to be there.
It works.
You'd adventure there, and it'd all be kind of bones, and everything's very dark and brown and grey. And there's not much kind of, even the palms themselves, like it's pushing more kind of reds and yellows. All the leaves are wilted. But then when you come out of there and you hit the Ancient Isles and the Shores of Plenty, it's like, oh, I'm back. So just trying to make it feel like a more varied voyage, a more varied adventure. But the Wilds was designed from the ground up to feel oppressive.
That's. I was really wondering if that was kind of at the root of it, because it is exactly that. Every time I get out of the Wilds, I'm like, oh, it's so nice. Oh man, it's such a relief.
Yeah. I feel like it is. I mean, and everyone said that, and maybe we did go a little bit too far. I'm not sure, but I think without that level of thinking, I think we would have just done 3 versions of typical Caribbean, which isn't that interesting.
True. There's
always. We had the freedom to extend any of those areas or go into new areas, which we obviously did with Devil's Roar. But each area was just trying to give you something unique.
So let's dive into the Devil's Roar, because that was something that I think all of us were extremely excited to find out what it was. Back when you guys had done a roadmap, which to me, the 180 you guys pulled at launch still boggles my mind. The fact that you guys had all these ideas and you put them all on hold for the most part, just so that you could actually address player concerns. And you completely far exceeded my expectations for what you guys were doing. I was blown out of the water the first year, and then we got anniversary update with the Tall Tales, and it was even better. And the thing I wanted to kind of bring up, we've moved into a monthly cadence with the updates for Sea of Thieves, which has been really interesting to see just how the world has changed. The thing I've always wanted to see kind of happen is to see the world kind of build and grow as time goes on. And we've had instances where it's happened drastically, say with like the rocks in the different parts of the island that have sprung up, or for example, the Sea Dog tavern in the middle of the spire. But we're starting to get to a place now where we're getting slight incremental updates with like Reaper's Hideout, where it appears that the Masked Stranger or someone helping the Masked Stranger is starting to build up a fort. And it's cool to see just like what's going to happen next month, to find out like what might change, what might not change, but to see it kind of shift and turn and start questioning our decisions as we continue to feed bones, gold, and silks to this mysterious person, along with these tombs that we don't understand but are named very curious titles. And I think back, and I brought this up when I was talking with Captain J from the Crow's Nest, that we kind of lament the time when we had this build up, we had this hype and this mystery of the unknown. Of all we had to go off of was a image that said Cursed Sails and Forsaken Shores, and we constantly kept thinking like, what could the Forsaken Shores be? And then when we found out that it was the Devil's Roar and it was the breadth of this new zone and all these volcanoes, it floored us as far as just what we were actually going to be getting. So I wanted to ask, do you like having the monthly cadence? Do you ever see wanting to do like a big update the way we had with Cursed Sails or with Forsaken Shores? Is there something epic enough for that to be warranted again, or are you content with how we're delivering, or how content is being delivered currently?
That's a great question. I think there's definitely advantages of both approaches, and you've kind of called them out, some of those advantages out. I think that first year of having air plans, and then in that first couple of weeks following launch, literally moving that stuff out and reevaluating what the game needed at that point. I mean that point is a challenging time anyway, because all we'd really had at that point, we'd had technical alphas, we'd had closed betas, but it's not really that wide audience that you see at launch. So it's a very hard time of knowing, well, we know how we feel about the game, but how ultimately is it going to land? And I think, honestly, it can go one of two ways. It can go, you've actually over-egged certain aspects, and this is actually going to slant more negative than you think, or you've undersold it and it's actually going to slant more positive. So you really don't know how the game's going to be perceived at a wide audience. I think the moment you know, and you know very quickly, it's easy to go, right, so that's where the pieces have fallen. We know exactly what we need to do now. Let's go, which is what that first year was about, which the feedback was loud and clear. Foundation's good. I mean, if you look across all even the kind of mixed reception, negative reception is like, the foundation's good. There's something special here, but I want more. I just want more. I want more things to do, more interaction to happen, more combinations of mechanics. So that was a simpler prospect to go from like a creative perspective, to go design and go implement. Obviously, it's a challenge to go deliver that stuff, but it was very clear what we needed to do. But that first year, as you say, was, here's a word on a roadmap. Get the imagination going. Oh, what could it be? Where they're going to take it? And your mind goes all to all these fanciful places. That's much more of a, even though we're running a service, a much more of a traditional DLC model, where a name gets announced and then your imagination goes wild. And that absolutely, it's like having several Christmases throughout the year. You've been given this very little you've been given this little tease, and your mind wanders and the speculation starts, and then it gets dropped in one go and you just get to consume it really fast. There's something really attractive about doing it that way, from, trying to engage players and excite them. I think it puts a lot of pressure in terms of, you're not really, and we didn't have our insider program for we didn't have the insider program in the way where there was such a lead time on people getting builds. So a lot of that stuff would land and cause issues with the game. So it's just a lot of content to get ready in one go, and that's absolutely nothing to do with the level of effort, because the level of effort is the same as 4 or 5 monthly updates all stuck together. It's nothing to do with the effort. It's about just how much the game is changing in one go, and how that can introduce issues and basically create instability in the game. And that puts a lot of pressure on the internal teams, where say you release any of those Hungry and Deep, Cursed Sails, Forsaken Shores, it comes out, but it's not over. You can't then instantly move on to the next piece of content, because you've got to spend the next 2 months fixing the issues you've introduced by dropping such a massive update. So this ripple effect happens. So you're stopped from making new content. So that's the downside of it. And then monthly updates, you're taking a lot. there's medium-sized features in the background that will drop when they're ready, like tall tales and features that are coming soon. And then, but every month players are guaranteed to get, some semblance of voyages. There's rewards. There's new things to go unlock. There's quality of life improvements. There's little features that are kind of going in there at the same time. The advantage of that is players know every single month they're going to get something, so you can feel excited each month. You're not going to disengage, or less likely to disengage, hopefully, between the major updates. And also it unlocks the stuff that you've seen us do, which has been really fulfilling, which is the environmental storytelling, really going deeper on that, which we've always been doing, but really trying to tell more of an episodic story unfolding, which is, I think, the way it's a niche thing, right? It's only going to appeal to people that really kind of value the, because it's slight things. It's the thing that Duke says. It's a hidden note here and there. It's an island that's changing over time, and knowingly, you're going into that thinking that only the most engaged players are going to notice it. But it's still so fulfilling to do. Create dots, get people to connect to them until eventually the world changes in a much more meaningful way. But I think what we've found is that the move to monthly makes more sense from a team perspective. You're releasing, you're always getting ready to release an update. So the moment January is released, you're straight on to finishing February's features that have been bubbling along for a while, and then finalising the build and getting that out there. The features are more understood. They've gone through more testing time. They're less likely to break the game, and then we can have these kind of monthly teases. And just in terms of us acquiring players and retaining players, the monthly updates are definitely doing a better job of that.
Yeah.
So I think we've found the right groove as a team for how we continue to expand this world. I think what I will say is there was definitely a shift last year where the monthly updates were, Black Pearl Stashes and Smuggler's Fortune, and there's kind of new things to go earn and quality of life. And then you had the slightly bigger drops like Fort the Damned, Maiden Voyage, and obviously Seabound Soul. And I think you'll see a lot more of that this year, and more so where there's larger features that we've been working on for a while dropping with a monthly update. So
that's
what
really
I will say is decouple the idea of monthly updates mean that it's only ever going to be small things, because that's not true. It just means that there's going to be something every month. It just might not be a big thing, but there is bigger things being worked on that will just jump on the next monthly update train.
See, that's what's exciting for me, because I love that we're getting monthly updates, but knowing that we're still going to be like, I was completely surprised when Maiden Voyage and Seabound Soul came out. I wasn't expecting those at all. So when people were like, there were whispers among the community under hushed words because of the insider NDA, but they were mentioning things, and I had no context to what it was. So getting to jump into the Maiden Voyage completely fresh, without any understanding of what to do, I spent probably way more time hunting for just any little tidbit of little hint that you guys could have put in there, and I was so rewarded when I did find something here or something there, and just enjoying that experience. And I've told you in the past, just the last leg of that adventure just being so beautifully crafted in its full experience. And same thing with Seabound Soul. Like the ramp up to the ending of Seabound Soul felt so awesome. It was absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to have more of those, because I feel like that's where the team is going with the monthly updates, is that we're going to be getting these tall tales more regularly as the game moves into some of the bigger story arcs that I think are eventually kind of coming to. Like, in my mind, I've already planned out what the next 3 months of Sea of Thieves is probably going to head towards, and I can't wait to see if I'm going to be right or wrong about it. But I'm excited nonetheless, because already you guys have kind of laid out the breadcrumbs as I'm slowly walking to the cottage in the middle of the forest, and I'm just I can't wait to find out, what's going to happen when I get to the cottage and stuff. But
I'm
some
glad
of
you
the
got to
things,
enjoy the maiden voyage fresh.
It was great, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to enjoy it that way.
I've been trying to get more and more people to jump in there because I want people who've never played Sea of Thieves to try out Maiden Voyage just so I can hear their perspective of it, because I feel like there's a lot that is kind of old knowledge for me, stuff that I've learned. So for me, like, okay, well, I know what a shovel is, I know how to fish, I know how to do all this, but I want to hear what people's experience about the first interactions with a skeleton tied to a tree that comes to life after you pull a sword out of it is like. So
still got to get him talking. He was meant to basically scream stuff at you when you pull the sword out.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
Turn back. Got to get
God.
We did record it, we just ran out of time. But I think like the monthly updates, it's like Maiden Voyage and Seabound Solden are great examples of, because something is coming out anyway, and it's up to the team to go, we think Seabound Soul is going to be ready for November, or we could sit down and play it and go, you know what, this is shaping up so well, let's hold it a little bit longer and let's really put the polish on this that we really want. So it lands and it totally has the impact that we want on players. You can do that because there's a separate thread of work that's just going to happen anyway, and it's going to get released every month. So there's always going to be a release for Sea of Thieves. But those bigger features are dropping in when they truly feel like they're ready. The core of it's there, and we know it's going to have an impact with players. I think it gives you the best of both worlds. But there's definitely going to be collections of features that have lore behind them that will, sometimes will want to hold. So they come in together. I mean, that's still, it's not fully like the first year with like a big DLC drop, but more the sense of just a group of features that coming together that thematically makes sense. We're still not prevented from doing that, and I think we are still going to do that because it makes sense to, to totally, hopefully blow players away with something a bit more meaningful. Yeah, no, it's definitely the right approach that we've found. And we've tried a lot of approaches, and this is the one that really kind of makes sense, both from a creative execution perspective, but also from a, not completely destroying the team every couple of months.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm glad to hear. At the end of the day, I love or hate different updates. Regardless, I want to make sure that whatever the monthly cadence is that it's not something that is just breaking the studio to the point where they just aren't content with the work that they're actually putting in, because that's
I think the risk is people will. This is a thing, you privileged enough to work for Rare, to work on Sea of Thieves, and the truth is that people will just do it. They will just do it because they're passionate about the game, and that's the truth. People will give up their evenings, they'll give up their weekends, they'll push every single day at 100 miles an hour, and it's just, you just find yourself falling into it, and everything around your work takes the hit, and that's not fair. This Sea of Thieves has to be a marathon, it's not a sprint. Like, if it's a sprint, it will come to an end, and we won't take this experience in this world to where it ultimately can be. We're just not going to make it because we'll burn ourselves out. We've got to. We know where we want this game to be. We know what it can be. We value so much what it means to our players, but we're going to get where we want to get, but we're going to do it as a marathon.
So, I wanted to. God, man, there's so much I want to ask that I don't think will actually get answered. But I wanted to. I've been thinking a lot about this next generation for Xbox and what it means for players to be able to upgrade their hardware and how that's going to affect Sea of Thieves, because there's been a lot of conversation around Xbox not restricting their first-party content to just the new series of consoles, but allowing older console systems to still enjoy the games that are going to be coming out from Microsoft. So I've been under this idea about how a lot of people have been wanting and desiring different biomes in the game. It's a constant thread that I see almost anytime there's a panel. Someone wonders like when there's going to be a certain number of things. There's always some things on this checklist that everyone has that they want to see checked off for Sea of Thieves. And in response to every time I hear that, I think, well, how would they address this? And the one idea that I had that I'm curious, not necessarily if this is something that's actually going to happen, because I don't think that you guys would ever come out and just say that, but I wanted to kind of hear what your feelings on this were, about effectively what would be a Sea of Thieves 2, like a sequel, where everything is coming to a close. The shroud is closing in on the seas that we know it. And there's a last-ditch effort for everyone to have to evacuate. And some people may make it, some people might not make it. But as we are shifting with the ebb and flow of the shroud, we start to sail out into the unknown. And as we follow the shroud, it takes us into these new biomes where we discover new cultures, new ship types, new people, and new types of events and lore to dive into. So I was kind of curious, is that something that is even feasible for Sea of Thieves? Is that something that, like with the shroud, the way it acts, is that a possibility, or is that just like a dream in the middle of the sky that I'm just going to let sit there?
No, I think that is mechanically how the shroud works. That absolutely could happen. I think obviously from a lore perspective, the history that you see in the ancient tiles and the cave paintings implies that at least that core of the shroud has been open for a long time, and
right,
thousands of years. But the outer fringes of the current known Sea of Thieves, there's been an ebb and a flow that has happened. I think the idea of basically wiping the slate clean and moving it forward to a completely different area is, when you say that, even I get really excited when you say that. That sounds really cool. I think, and this is still true, we called them outposts very, very deliberately, because it was the idea of, you players, you haven't turned up in the golden age. You haven't turned up after the golden age. You haven't turned up and missed everything, because the golden years of Sea of Thieves are still ahead, both in terms of the lore, the place, what you do in the game, but also what it means to you as a player. You haven't turned up and missed the best bits. You haven't turned up in the bustling pirate ports with cobbled streets and taverns where people start adventures. You've turned up and it's basically a new frontier. They're frontier towns with people trying to scratch a living. And the trading companies themselves, they're not like the companies of the outside world or outside the shroud, our equivalent to the East India Trading Company. They are tiny little trading company representatives trying to scratch a living in this new world. And I think I love the idea of the shroud expanding, and that's why we wanted that approach in the first place, because it made sense for the world, but also gave you that creative freedom to kind of say, well, who knows what's hidden in there? This thing could expand over time, as you saw with Devil's Roar.
Yeah.
But I think there's something nice about, if that ever did happen, the idea of Plunder Outpost is not even Plunder Outpost anymore. Plunder Outpost is something else, and you see that recognizable stack in the center, and you've got that sense of history, but now it's something else. It's a truly established pirate port. I think that would be, and I'm not confirming any, I'm just saying that would be a nice direction in which to go. That there could be new places to sail, but the places that you've called home over several years of playing Sea of Thieves are now fundamentally changed. And
that's something I know a few of my friends, other content creators and stuff, we've talked about the Like when will we be able to have established and help establish the merchants and the different factions on the outposts enough to where we can open a pirate emporium above the Order of Souls tent and utilize that building. I've had this idea that I think eventually Duke will have so much gold and standing within the bilge rats that he'll buy the upstairs half of the tavern and he'll rebuild the staircase. And when we go to visit Duke, he may be down getting a beer, but he may be upstairs having a party and all these different things. But I do really love the idea of how Sea of Thieves will continue to grow and change and expand and kind of see how things evolve. Maybe we have, Plunder Outpost starts to take true to its name and becomes more of a hub for like gold hoarders. So if you wanted to take the good plunder, then you wanted voyages from the best of the best, then you would have to sail down to Plunder Outpost, because that's where all of the gold hoarders have coveted the best maps to try and get some of the most interesting treasure as you kind of go on. But if you wanted to go out into the wilds, you would be able to come up against some of the most ruthless skeletons that the Order of Souls have ever even heard about, and they're venturing out to try and go out there. So Galleon's Grave, you're dealing with Order of Souls merchants just all around, constantly trying to feed you the best bounties for the most ruthless skeletons that are out there for true vengeance kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can start to see in a small way, and you'll start to see this pay off. But what's happening with the Reaper's hideout? Like whatever is going on there, obviously players are central to expanding whatever the goal of the Mass Stranger is. And whatever that goal ends up being, you can imagine that trading companies are going to notice that, and they're going to react in suit to what's happened. So, I mean, that is what we're always trying to do, which is, if there is a big world change, like trying to put players at the heart of it. And then the lore and ultimately what players do with new mechanics are linked. We're very, very linked.
I'm curious, because with the Mass Stranger, she's obviously asking us for very specific items at this point for her own ends, until we can find out what that is. And there's definitely a sense of unease about what we're doing as pirates when we make that conscious decision to take our treasure to her in the sense of reward. And I was talking with Thor von Blitz earlier today, for the recording for this week, that it feels like you guys kind of pegged us real quick with the video that came out E3 2018 when you introduced the cursed cannonballs, and it was taken to Madame Olivia, and she had this prophetic vision of what was going to happen in the Sea of Thieves coming, and she looks at the pirate in front of her and she's like, you just want to know how much this is worth? And he's like, yeah. She's like, all right, 10. Spot on. That's pretty much how I feel right now whenever I take stuff to the Mass Stranger. I'm like, I feel like what I'm doing is probably not a good idea, but you drive a hard bargain, lady. And I love that. But I was wondering, to kind of bring it down to an actual question is did you consider, when developing that character and the route that we're on right now, giving players an opt-out for that, or was it always kind of a default to just taking it to the merchants?
You mean an opt-out in terms of the story could have gone in a different direction?
Yeah, giving players more agency to decide. In my mind, I've been recently playing the latest World of Warcraft expansion, and there's been a conscious decision from Horde players to decide if they're loyal to Sylvanas, who's become quite tyrannical in her storyline, or remain loyal to the outsiders who feel like her approach is pushing it as far as what's considered honorable within the Horde. And there's risk and reward with the two decisions that are given, and there's payoff for one side versus the other side. And I'm curious, is there ever a time where you were wondering if you could build the Masked Stranger to kind of give more insight to what's going on with people who are willing to take stuff to support her funding, or if players could be kind of kept in the dark if they aren't venturing out to visit her?
There was a really interesting one idea that I loved, and this was more to do with kind of the narrative kind of dissonance of the gold. You defeat the Gold Hoarder at the end of Shores of Gold, but he's back all the time because you want players to be able to replay that tale. So you're finishing this epic story, but he's still there. The idea of the only way to truly defeat the Gold Hoarder is to stop giving gold to the Gold Hoarders, is to stop profiting through the greed of others. That's the only way to defeat the Gold Hoarder. And just kind of that idea, you kind of know how that inevitably is going to play out, but I do absolutely adore that idea. But I think it's more a case of, and this is the bit where it's the mechanics design and the world building and the lore design and community feedback. All that's and the way we build this game is quite unique to Sea of Thieves. The way we release content, the way we interact with our community, it's really a case of the game is only ever a snapshot of where it is on its journey, and player feedback ebbs and flows in terms of what's the most important thing right now across new players, medium-term players, super engaged players, the people that have been with us since the start. Like, what's the most important thing if you were to tease all of that out? And that's, you can build a picture of that in your head of, okay, so these next 5 things in this order is what we need to hit to move the game forward in the way that we want to move it forward, because we're trying to have this vision for where we want to take the game, but that also answers the gameplay need of our players and what they want. And I think, so let's say, for example, you pick out, idea X or feature X. This is the next important thing that our players are asking for because it answers all these questions. You then go, what in our world represents that or could represent that and surprise people? And that's where you go, oh, we built out our world lore. Let's connect that piece of lore with this gameplay need, and then they'll both suit the same purpose. So that's what we do.
Man, that sounds hard.
Really, I mean, there's really simple examples of that, and there's really more complex examples. But a really simple example would be really simple. The seas are too empty. Completely fair feedback. We'd sold the vision of every cell on the player. Beautiful, pure vision. We all believed in it wholeheartedly. But the seas were too empty. Fair enough. So we want to introduce some kind of an AI threat. Right. Okay. So there's skeleton forts. How are the skeleton forts stocked? Okay. Then you go, right, it's skeletons. Skeletons are raising shipwrecks from the depths by some unknown power, and they're filling some vaults for some reason. But that's why the seas are more populated. It's just a simple way of tying the lore to a gameplay need. And then what you're seeing with the Masked Stranger is kind of a more complex version of that, of trying to move the game forward and give players more of what they're looking for in the game, but also try and do it in a way that surprises them. So yeah, but like that bit's the best bit. That bit's the really fun bit of trying to live up to players' expectations, but also trying to exceed them. And it's hard, but it's the best part of the job.
That's awesome. I hadn't really thought to try and connect the fact that you at the end of the day you can put in as much lore as you want, but it has to be engaging to the whole audience as far as like bringing tools to the table so that people can have fun in new and interesting ways. One
it's like
quick
the flame
question.
Heart thing, the flame heart element at the end of Seabound Soul. I mean, it felt like he'd Flameheart himself. I know there's the senior and the junior thing, but built up over several elements of lore. He's for want of a better word. He's our Darth Vader. He's our Emperor Palpatine of the Sea of Thieves.
Yeah.
He's the ultimate pirate who gave in to the, he just wants to be a pirate for all eternity. He doesn't care what damage he leaves in his wake. It didn't feel right to just turn him into another Skelly Lord boss fight with custom moves or, a kind of a big encounter, because how is it ever going to pay off what he represents? And that's not to say there's not going to be a climax of that story at some point, but it felt like now he needs to be bigger than a physical threat, which was the idea of, okay, so the Dark Relics can bridge the physical world with the Sea of Thieves supernatural realm, the Sea of the Damned. What if Flameheart could transcend and he could be anywhere and he could access the Sea of the Damned? What damage could he cause? Like, how can we turn him in? How can we amplify what he can do in the world? Which is what Seabound Soul was. So now we've got our ultimate good guy, the Pirate Lord, which sounds incredibly simple, but it's really about, the good, representing the good of players is the Pirate Lord, and then you've got Flameheart, who represents the bad side of players, and then in between you've got all the shades of grey of the trading companies. But that's the direction we're heading in, which is there's a more known spectrum in the Sea of Thieves between good, between bad, and then players can slide along that scale in the middle to have the adventures that they want to have. I mean, that's the direction that we're heading in. So again, it's still tapping into that kind of the emotions and choose your own adventure, but it's got this kind of canvas behind it, which breathes life into it through all this lore.
I really hope, and this, I know this puts pressure on you, but I really hope that at some point there's going to be a point where players will have to decide where their loyalties lie, whether they're for the Pirate Lord or whether they're for Captain Flameheart. Because I got some cutthroat buddies and I've got some Pirate Lord friends who love the community and stuff. So seeing how those, I mean, I see it every day on the seas, but I would love to kind of see how that all comes together, and I'm really excited to find out where you guys are going with this story. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. I promised I would keep it to 45 minutes to an hour. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope I get a chance to do this again with you later on. Hopefully after the next anniversary comes out and we get a chance to kind of look back over the last year and see what's coming in the future, especially considering there's some characters that you've talked about, some characters that you've put into this game that are near and dear to me that I really want to see come to fruition. Like I love Nine Katzner, I love Diving Bell. I can't wait to see why there's a statue of her holding onto a buoy in the middle of Rare Studios. I need to find out that story, and I can't wait to do so. But thank you so much for joining me tonight.
No, it was an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Yeah, we should definitely do this again. Like absolute joy to talk about the game and obviously get into kind of the meaning behind it all. It's absolute joy to do. So yeah, we should do it again.
Awesome. It's beautiful. And then if you had to pick a faction, what's your favorite faction and what's your favorite island?
I'm going to say Gold Hoarders because it's the quintessential pirate activity of treasure hunting. Favorite island? I'd say Thieves Haven.